Welcome back to another episode of History Hunter's Signature Edition. Today I'm going to be talking about some New York City history, but more specifically, an activity that was called organ grinding. I'm going to ask Sarah right now if she knows what this is.
Organ grinding.
Yeah.
Can I Google it?
You don't know what an organ grinder is?
Define organ. Internal organ?
Like the ones you crank and it plays music and a little monkey comes out and grabs your money.
Monkeys come out? Monkeys come out. Or is the organ grinder the person?
Yes.
That does the little organ?
I'm asking you because you like animals, and I wonder if you thought of the little monkeys being put to use as a...
So what do I think about having a monkey be basically a circus animal?
Yeah.
There's two ways I can feel about it, because what is the reason behind the monkey being in captivity?
To be used by human to be a beggar on the street.
For financial gain? Oh, well, I don't really agree with that.
Well, I'm going to talk about the history of organ grinding.
You're going to talk
on an episode of History Hunter's Signature Edition.
Oh, what do you have a signature of?
You'll have to find out.
So the subject of this episode is this letter. It's a 1935 letter written by New York Mayor Laguardia, for which the LaGuardia Airport is named. In it, he addresses a woman who was a little concerned that he outlawed organ grinding. This is a fascinating letter, but I didn't know a lot about the history about why they eliminated organ grinding. Now, I've only seen one organ grinder in my life, and it was at the Monterey Wharf. And, it's a touristy area. So there's this guy dressed in a sailor suit, and he had this little monkey, and they had this little box that they crank, and it pumps out air through the bellows and makes this neat sound. I thought it was kind of a neat thing. I held the little guy. He stuck his fingers in my sweater, like he was fascinated with my sweater. And then a photo op was off, and I paid him some bucks. But I just thought it was cool. I haven't seen him since, so I'm assuming that he's passed away since then. And then a little monkey comes out, and he starts taking your money, and he sticks it in his pocket. Well, of course, the money's going to go to the organ grinder.
Of course, it's the organ grinder and Miko the monkey. Almost every day, all summer long, Miko and Mr. Russo come to the park. Mr. Russo cranks his organ, and Miko collects pennies from the children and puts them in his pocket. He's supposed to tip his hat, but sometimes he forgets. And Mr. Russo tugs gently to remind him. What fun to watch the monkey.
But in the 1930s, it wasn't such a cute thing because it seemed like there was an organ grinder on just about every street corner. Now, you got to keep in mind that this is the Great Depression that was going on, so people were just trying to make a buck wherever they can. So a lot of them would set up on street corners. There was a problem with congestion. A lot of people didn't like the begging aspect, and there was a lot of organized crime. They were actually leasing these organs to Italian immigrants. In New York City, the massive influx of Italian immigrants led to a situation where by 1880, nearly 1 in 20 Italian men in certain areas were organ grinders. Not only did organ grinders impede traffic, but if you were upstairs in one of the offices and you heard this guy grinding out this sound nonstop throughout the day, it would probably drive you crazy too. So they applied pressure on the mayor. He outlawed it in 1935. And the lady that he wrote this letter to wasn't too happy about it. And he explains why he did what he did. Actually, it's a 2-page letter. And he signed the back page, the last page, Fiorello Laguardia, for which the New York airport is named. And I thought I would read this to you, but also, I got the original envelope. So that's pretty cool. A 3-cent stamp with George Washington on it. It's always cool when you get an autograph with the actual envelope that it was sent in. As a side note, this is a first day cover that I got, and apparently, the mayor signed right here, but apparently the way it looks like it's been folded, it had been matted, maybe just this part showing under a matted photo. But this is a 1944 envelope that he signed. He was still mayor at the time. 99 cents on eBay. It's crazy what I paid for it. I'm going to go ahead and read this letter to you. It's to a Mrs. Ruth Osborne in Batavia, New York. My dear Mrs. Osborne, this is to acknowledge your letter of March 14th, 1935, with reference to the refusal of the Commissioner of Licenses to issue any more licenses for organ grinders. The Commissioner's action was taken with my full consent. My feeling in the matter is that the institution of organ grinding has long outlived its purpose. There was a time when it was really the only means of bringing melodious tunes to the ears of many people. However, about a generation ago, the phonograph came into general use, still later the radio into general use, and provided music of all kinds. Meanwhile, public concerts became quite general, and now are an established institution. We have free public concerts in parks, libraries, and other public places. As far as music is concerned, the organ grinder no longer fills a wanted need. In addition, traffic conditions are entirely different from what they were when the hand organ was at the height of its popularity. In fact, in many districts, they almost constitute a menace to the lives of children who are tempted to gather about them and follow them through the streets, despite the presence of automobiles and trucks. There are also other reasons for the elimination of hand organs. Considerable abuses have been practiced. There have been instances of exploiters who rented out the instruments at exorbitant fees. To curb such practices, licenses were necessary. What I object to is that a city like New York should license or give permission to any individual for public begging. Every fee the city takes is just a percentage of the public begging. It is this feature that I object to and want to eliminate. A year ago, I terminated another similar custom. The city, I found, had been entertaining into contracts with itinerant musicians to play on city ferries. This was plainly an instance of licensing to beg on city property. If you will study the foregoing reasons, I think you will find, as I have, that they far outweigh the pure sentimental reasons for permitting the continued licensing of organ grinders. Very sincerely yours, Fiorello H. Laguardia, Mayor. When I read this letter, I'm just struck by how things have changed, how it's almost, I wouldn't say encouraged, but, when people are begging on the streets or panhandling, I know it's a problem in a lot of communities, especially in California, but it's not discouraged. Some municipalities do discourage it, but, sometimes they just let it happen. One of the unintended consequences of outlawing organ grinding was the fact that a lot of these devices were destroyed, and inside the music that was actually played, the little rolls that were used, they were also destroyed. So there's not a lot of that exists today, which is sad because it's part of American folklore. Now, to give you an idea of how some people felt about organ grinders, this is an excerpt of an article from 1929 when George Orwell wrote of the organ grinders of London. Quote, "To ask outright for money is a crime, yet it is perfectly legal to annoy one's fellow citizens by pretending to entertain them. Their dreadful music is the result of a purely mechanical gesture and is only intended to keep them on the right side of the law. There are in London about a dozen firms specializing in the manufacture of piano organs, which they hire out for 15 shillings a week. The poor devil drags his instrument around from 10 in the morning till 8 or 9 at night. The public only tolerates them grudgingly, and this is only possible in working-class districts, for in the richer districts the police will not allow begging at all, even when it is disguised. As a result, the beggars of London live mainly on the poor." End quote. Many cities in the United Kingdom also had ordinances prohibiting organ grinding. LaGuardia was a Republican. He was mayor from 1934 to 1946, nearly coinciding with the term of President Franklin Roosevelt, so he was in power for a long time.
We are going to try and demonstrate that a non-partisan, non-political, honest, clean government is possible in our city. And if we succeed here, surely other cities may follow our example.
In the months prior to America's entrance into World War II, President Roosevelt made LaGuardia director of the Office of Civilian Defense, which prepared the public for blackouts, air raids, and sirens. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, LaGuardia was replaced in that position. His popularity waned during the war years, and he chose not to run for mayor again in 1945. However, he continued to work, serving as the Director General of the United Nations Relief and Rehabilitation Administration in 1946. The former mayor developed pancreatic cancer and despite surgery was unable to beat it. He died in his sleep on September 20th, 1947 at the age of 64. Today you'll find him at Woodlawn Cemetery in the Bronx. In 1972, his memory was honored on this 14-cent U.S. postage stamp. In a 1993 poll, Laguardia was voted the best former mayor in America. Now, the law that banned borough organs in New York was repealed in 1975, but by then the mode of musical performance was pretty much limited to the tourist areas. I would love to hear what you thought of this little episode of History Hunter's Signature Edition, and I'm curious if you've ever seen an organ grinder yourself. Thank you so much for joining us again on this episode of History Hunters.